Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy, and today I'm going to show you how I made these cute crochet cat appliques. I'm going to be using my appliques to make some Halloween decor, but you can use your cat appliques for whatever reason you want. Some things you'll need for this project are a crochet hook, I'm going to use a size E, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and some yarn. I'm using black yarn to make a spooky black cat for Halloween. But in the tutorial, I'll be showing you what I did using this magenta yarn, just to make it easier to see what I'm doing. You can use pretty much any yarn or hook size to make this project. Just bear in mind that using a larger hook or yarn size will make a larger applique, and using a smaller yarn or hook size will make a smaller applique. Using a thicker yarn, like worsted weight yarn, will create a shape that's more dense, but using a thinner yarn, like a lace weight yarn, will result in a more lacy shape. So use whatever size you think works best for your project. You can also find the written pattern for this applique in my Ravelry store. So to begin the head, I'm going to create a slip knot and then chain 3. The first chain is going to count as the foundation chain, and the second and third chain are going to count as the first stitch of double crochet. Next, I'm going to double crochet 5 more times into the third chain from the hook, so that I have a total of 6 stitches. So now I have 6 stitches total, and this is going to be the first row of the head. Now I'm going to add 2 more rows of single crochet. So I'm going to chain 1 for the first stitch, turn the work, and then I'll single crochet into each of the 5 other double crochets in the row, including the chain 2 that counted as the first stitch. So here's what I have so far. I'm going to add 1 more row of single crochet. So I'll chain 1 to count as the first stitch, turn the work, and this time I'm going to single crochet into the next 4 stitches only. And I'm going to leave the last stitch open. So into that last stitch, instead of single crocheting, I'm going to chain 1 and slip stitch so that my working yarn ends up somewhere at the middle of the head instead of at the top. So I'm going to chain 1, insert my hook into the chain that counted as the first stitch in the previous row, and slip stitch into that stitch. And now instead of being up here where the stitch would have been if I had single crocheted, my working yarn is right here at about the middle of the head. And here is what we have so far. Next, I'm going to create the foundation chain for the body and the tail. So to do this, I'm going to chain 30, so now I have 30 chains. Next, I'm going to create the other side of the foundation for the tail. So first, I'm going to single crochet into the third chain from the hook. And then I'll single crochet into the next chain. This will make the tip of the tail a little bit thicker than the rest of the tail. Next, I'm going to slip stitch into the next 17 stitches. Now I have the tail foundation, the body foundation, and the first few rows of the head finished. So now I'm going to do the first row of the body, and then at the same time I'm going to create the foundation chains for the legs. So to make the first stitch of the body, I'm going to chain 2 for the first stitch, and both of these chains are going to count as a stitch when I work the next row later. Next, I'm going to work around the entire body foundation chain. So I'm going to do a double crochet, I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop around the entire chain. And double crochet. Next, I'm going to create the first leg foundation chain. So to do that, I'll chain 15. So now I have a chain of 15 at the end of the body to count as the first leg foundation chain. So now to create the other side of the foundation chain, slip stitch into the third chain from the hook, and then I'll slip stitch into the next 3 chains. Next, I want to create the heel of the foot. So to do that, I'm going to skip the next 2 chains and slip stitch into the next one. So I've skipped these 2 chains, and now on the 3rd chain from where I am now, I'm going to slip stitch, and that'll create this little bump at the back of the leg. Now I'm just going to slip stitch into the last 6 stitches of the chain. Now I have the foundation chain for one leg done, and here's the tail and the body and the head, and now I'm going to continue along the body around the foundation chain for the body. So I'm going to double crochet once around the foundation chain, and move that stitch down to the end of the chain. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did to create this leg to create another leg. So I'll chain 15, then slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook, slip stitch into the next 3 chains, then skip the next 2 chains and slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. And that will create the bump at the back of the heel. Now I'll slip stitch into the last 6 stitches of the chain. And now I'm going to continue working around the body foundation chain. So I'm going to double crochet 2 times around the chain, and then move those stitches over to the end. Here's what we have so far. Now to create the arched back shape here, I'm going to do some decreases with 5 stitches all clustered together. First I'm going to do this with double crochet, and then I'm going to do this with treble crochet. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. First, just as if I was making a normal double crochet, I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and then I'm going to pull through 2 of the loops on my hook, as though I was making a double crochet, but I'm going to leave the stitch open on the hook. Now I'm going to repeat that 4 more times so that I have a total of 5 of these stitches made and a total of 6 loops on the hook. So yarn over and pull up a loop around the chain, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, 2 more, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, and then 1 more time, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. Now I have my 5 stitches here, plus my original loop here from my last stitch. Now I'm just going to finish this by pulling a loop through all 6 loops on my hook. And now I've decreased all 5 of those double crochet stitches together. And when I work my next row on this side, this will just count as 1 stitch. So now I'm going to do that again 2 more times, this time using treble crochets. So just as though I was making a normal treble crochet, I'm going to yarn over 2 times, and then pull up a loop around my chain. Then I'll pull through 2, and then pull through 2 again, as though I was making a treble crochet, but again, leave it open on the hook. Then I'll repeat that 4 more times until I have a total of 5 of these unfinished stitches, plus my working loop on the hook, for a total of 6 loops on the hook. Yarn over 2, pull up a loop, and pull through 2, and pull through 2, and then once again yarn over 2, pull up a loop, pull through 2, and pull through 2. And now I have my 5 unfinished treble crochet stitches and my original loop all on my hook. So now I'm going to pull a loop through all 6 loops on my hook. And then I'll repeat the same thing to create one more set of 5 decreased treble crochet stitches. And here is what we have so far. Next, I'll treble crochet 2 around the body foundation chain. So now I'm going to make another leg in the same way that I made these legs. I'm going to chain 15. Then slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook, slip stitch into the next 3 stitches, skip the next 2 stitches and slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook, and then slip stitch into the last 6 chains. Next, I'll double crochet 2 times around the body foundation chain. And then once again, chain 15 to create the next leg. Then slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook, slip stitch into the next 3 chains, skip the next 2 chains, and slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. Then slip stitch into the remaining 6 chains. Next, to finish the neck, I'll half double crochet 2 times around the body foundation chain. And now I've created the first row all the way around the body of my cat. So here's what we have so far in the foundation row. In the next row, I'm going to work around the face and create the ears, and then I'll do one more row around the entire body. For this part, I'm going to work around the entire row. Into the first eye on the right side of the face, this is going to be in between the 2nd and 3rd double crochet from row 1. I'm going to insert my hook and I'm going to single crochet 3 times. Next, to create an open mouth shape, I'm going to chain 3. You don't have to do this if you want. If you wanted to just create a closed mouth shape, You could just slip stitch right into the slip knot at the base of the stitches from row 1, but I'm just going to chain 3 to create an open mouth. Next, I'll work into the next eye, which is going to be in between the 4th and 5th double crochet from row 1. So I'll insert my hook in between those stitches and single crochet 5 times. Now, as you can see, we have the mouth shape, the nose shape, and the 2 eyes. And those eyes are going to become more clear as we continue to work into the row. Next, I'm going to make the ear. So I'm going to chain 5. And then I'll slip stitch into the 4th chain from the hook to create the tip of the ear. And then I'll just chain 1 to make the other side of the ear. Next, to make the part of the head that is in between the 2 ears, I'll single crochet 2 more times into the same eye. Once again, I'm going to work around the entire row. Now I'll do the same thing on the other side, into the other eye. And now you can see the little face starting to take shape. Next, I'm going to make the other ear. By doing the same thing, I'll chain 5. And then slip stitch into the 4th chain from the hook. And now to create the other side of the ear, I'll chain 1. And then to complete the other side, I'll single crochet 2 more times into the same eye. Okay. And now we have our little kitty face shape. Next, I'm going to work along the top side of the foundation chain that I made for the body. I'll work in between the bases of the stitches that I made at the bottom of the body, but I'm not going to work between every single stitch. I'll be skipping some stitches. It doesn't really matter that much which stitches you skipped, but I'm going to skip every other stitch at the beginning, and then I'll work more of my stitches densely at the middle, and then I'll skip pretty much whatever's left over at the end. This is so that I can try to maintain that arched back shape. So I'm going to single crochet 2, but I'll skip a stitch in between each stitch. So I'll skip the first stitch, then single crochet 1 in the next. Then I'll skip the next stitch, and single crochet again in the next. Next I'll skip another stitch, and then half double crochet in the next, so yarn over and half double crochet. Then I'll do that again, so I'll skip a stitch, and then in between the next stitches, yarn over and half double crochet. And now I'm going to skip to double crochets, and then I'll stop skipping. So first I'll skip 1 more, and then I'll double crochet, so yarn over and pull up a loop, pull through 2, and double crochet. And now I'm going to stop skipping stitches, so I'm just going to double crochet. I want to have a total of 10 double crochets, so since I've already made my first one, I'll double crochet 9 more times. This time I won't be skipping any stitches. Okay, so now I've finished with my 10 double crochets. Now I'm going to skip 1 stitch and half double crochet again. So skip 1 and half double crochet. And then I'm just going to skip all the rest of the stitches. There should be about 4 left. And then I'm just going to slip stitch right into that first stitch at the base of the tail on this side. And now I'm going to slip stitch around each stitch of the tail, all the way around until I get to the opposite side of the base of the tail. Again, it doesn't really matter how many stitches you end up doing. I ended up having 38 slip stitches here total. So I've finished slip stitching around the tail. Next I'm going to slip stitch around the body and around each leg. So first I'm going to slip stitch 3 until I reach the base of the first leg. Next I'm going to slip stitch 8 times until I get to about where this heel is. So I reached the heel. Here I'm going to chain 1 just to emphasize the shape of that heel. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can just continue to slip stitch around the heel, but I'm just going to chain 1 to emphasize that little bump at the back of the heel. Next I'm going to slip stitch 6 more times until I get to the tip of the toe. Alright, so now I've done 6 more slip stitches around the side of the leg. Now I'm going to create the toes. I'm going to single crochet 3 more times into the next stitch. You don't have to do this if you would rather create a more thin shaped leg. You could just continue to slip stitch around the shape, but for this leg I'm going to create 3 single crochets into the toe to thicken the bottom of the foot. And I'm actually going to be doing that with every other leg to create a sense of dimension. So I'll show you when I get to the other leg how to do this without adding the single crochets to the toe. Now I'll continue to slip stitch around the shape. I'll slip stitch 11 more times until I reach the top of the leg. And then I'll slip stitch 1 more time into the stitch in between the legs. Next I'll repeat the same thing to the other leg, except I'll do it without adding those single crochets to the tip of the toe, so that I can create a slightly smaller leg for this side, so that it adds a sort of sense of dimension. So first I'll slip stitch into the first 8 stitches of the leg, and then I'll chain 1 to emphasize that little bump at the back of the heel. Next, instead of slip stitching 6 and then adding the single crochets to the tip of the toe, I'm just going to slip stitch around until I finish the leg. If you want, you could still add the 3 single crochets to the tip of the toe, but for this leg, again just to add some dimension, I'm just going to do slip stitches until I reach the other side. This will be 18 slip stitches. So I've completed 2 legs, and one is just a little bit bigger than the other, and that's going to create a bit of a sense of dimension with the pose. Next, I'll slip stitch until I get to the next leg, so along this bottom area, I'll slip stitch 7. And now, for the last 2 legs, I'll just repeat the same thing that I did for these legs on this side. So I'll slip stitch into the first 8 stitches. And then I'll chain 1 to emphasize the little bump at the back of the heel, and then slip stitch into the next 6 stitches. And then I'll single crochet 3 times into the next stitch. Then I'll slip stitch 11 more times until I reach the top of the leg. Next, I'll slip stitch into the next 2 stitches until I reach the next leg, and then I'll repeat the same thing I did for the second leg to create the 4th leg. So slip stitch into the next 8 stitches, then I'll chain 1 and slip stitch into the next 18 stitches. And then I'll slip stitch into the last 2 stitches at the neck. If you want, you could end the work here, but I'm going to do one more row of slip stitches around the head and along the back, just to give it a nicely finished edge all the way around. First, I'll slip stitch 14 times until I reach the tip of the first ear. Here at the tip of the ear, I'm going to chain 1, just to emphasize that little corner at the tip. Then I'll slip stitch 11 times until I reach the tip of the next ear. And at the tip of the next ear, I'll chain 1, again to emphasize that corner. Then I'm going to slip stitch 20 more times until I get all the way across to the base of the tail. Now I've gotten to the base of the tail. Now I'm just going to slip stitch to end the row, and then I'll cut off my yarn and sew in the ends. And now my cat appliques are finished. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think they all look super cute, even the ones that are in weird colors, and I'm excited to incorporate some of these into some really cute Halloween decor. What would you use these cat appliques for? Let me know in the comments. And if you feel inspired to make something using this or any of my designs, I'd love to see your creations. You can find all of my social media links in the description below, or you could tag me on Instagram at LizFairy. If you enjoyed this video, you could press the like button or share it on social media, and if you'd really like to help out the channel, you can donate to my Patreon. You can get some pretty cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos early, access to some of my prototype patterns, and discounts in my Ravelry store depending on your level of donation. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. You could also subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss my next video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a really happy and really safe Halloween, and I'll see you next time. Bye!